All right. I am Chronic Mayhem, and today we will be taking a look at the Flydigi Apex 4 Pro Controller. Let's get into it. All right, so to start out with, this controller was sent to me by Flydigi, but this is not a sponsored video. No money changed hands, and they do not get to see this video before I post it. All right, so before we start getting into all of the features of this controller and the looks and all that, let's take a look of what you get in the box. So I didn't reassemble it, but the box comes in this sleeve right here where everything is entirely in Chinese. There's no English on this thing at all. So this is actually the box that's in the sleeve, and I think this actually looks really cool. I wish it came like this as is. It kind of reminds me of the box I got from AIM controllers, you know, the all black with the gloss logo on the top. It has a flap at the top, and when you open it, your controller sits here, all nice and pretty. You know, it's a pretty good presentation. You get a nice braided USB-A to USB-C cable. I like that it's black and blue. Those are my colors, so I'm going to use this for pretty much everything, I think. You get this little, like, kind of little package card thing that opens up here, which has all the instruction manuals, which are, drumroll, all in Chinese as well. So there's really no English instructions to this, even though it's sold on the American Amazon. And with the pictures, you can kind of figure out what's going on. Luckily, when I get to the screen, it was already in English, so I didn't need to, you know, stumble through the menus in Chinese until I found how to change it. So that was good. All right. Back to the controller now. Hold on. There's one thing I forgot that's in the box. So there's this tiny pack here.
That's what she said. Excuse me?
And it says, illuminate your personalized light panel. So apparently you take these, and there's about, I think, 3 or 4 in there. And you take this little pin here, and you can, like, scratch out your own little logo or name or whatever. And then you take this off, and you can replace this one right here, that's cool. It's kind of a weird way to go about it, but I do like that they give you that option, and I probably will try to do that in the future. It's interesting that they have Chinese and English on this one, but they don't have in the manual, but I guess it's not that big of a deal. So on that same note, discussing the, overall aesthetics of this controller, it does only come in white, which is a little bit of a bummer for me. I usually like to buy all my electronics in black, but that being said, it is quite a pretty controller. It's got some translucent blue accents here on the triggers and on the thumbstick modules down here. We're going to take a closer look at these because they are actually these are actually very interesting in themselves. It has this the top faceplate is clear. It's completely clear, which allows you to view the internal motors right here on each side, which is pretty neat. And we'll take a better look at those when we take this face panel off. This controller also has a screen similar to the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultimate, I believe it's called. This one is much smaller, but we'll go over everything about this screen later as well. It is surrounded by this completely mirrored section up here, which I think looks really cool. It does attract fingerprints. There, learn how to talk. Fingerprints all over it. I mean, but they wipe off pretty easily. It would be nice if this was, you know what, I take that back, because I was going to say if this was a matte finish, but if this was a matte finish, it probably wouldn't make the screen itself look as good. So I do like this. It is just be aware when you're hitting these buttons up here that you are probably going to leave thumbprints all over this. On the back of the controller, The gray and white theme continues. I got distracted. I thought there was dirt on the back, but there isn't. So you get these really nice
Really nice.
rubber grips on the side, which is a nice change compared to the Vader 3 Pro, where if you wanted rubber grips, you had to add your own. I have a video on these grips as well. I'll leave a link in the description. Now, if we do just a quick overview of the features of this controller before we really start to dive into each one individually, this controller has Hall effect joysticks just like on the Vader 3 Pro. The difference is these ones, you can adjust the tension very similar to how you can on the Elite Series 2. This controller also has the same micro mouse click like switches on all of the face buttons and on the D-pad. It has the same back paddle system as well that is seen on the Vader 3 Pro. And this controller actually has I don't want to call it adaptive trigger, but it has motors in the trigger that will give you feedback pretty similar to how they operate on the PS5 controller. It's not the exact same. Like it won't be, for example, let's say you're in a driving game and some cars might handle differently. It won't be like that. It's just essentially whenever there's a vibration that would trigger the hand motors, it would trigger these as well. They're actually really cool, and I will go into those later when we focus only on the triggers. This controller also has 1,000 hertz polling, wired and wireless. So you don't need to overclock this like you might need to with the PS5 controller or the Vader 3 Pro. The Vader 3 Pro has a 500 hertz polling rate. This already has 1,000 right out of the box, which is fantastic. These thumbsticks are also exchangeable. They come off, you just pull them off. They're held on by friction, and there's little tabs right here, if you can see that. The sticks from the Vader 3 Pro also fit on here. You just got to line them up, and they will slap right on there and work perfectly. So when you want to buy taller sticks for this, I believe you have to buy the ones that look like they belong to the Vader 3 Pro. And I've only seen those on AliExpress or the Flydigi website. I haven't seen any more different sticks on Amazon, for example. And the ones I did see, they are black on top. This is a thumbstick cover from Play Vital. I'll leave a link to those in the description, but the rubber is black underneath. And I've only seen these black ones on Amazon rather than the white ones. So to get this panel off here, you continue to take off the removable sticks, and you also take off the D-pad as well. You get your fingers underneath it, and it pops right off in a very similar fashion as the thumbsticks. It has 2 tabs as well, just like they do, and you just match them up and push it on. Then you can get your fingernails underneath the panel, and it will come right off just like that. So this is the area I mentioned at the beginning of the video where you could use these and scratch a logo according to these instructions and put that in here. And then you could have your own little custom logo here. Noting you can upload a logo to appear on the screen as well through the Flydigi software. I would maybe consider replacing this because one pet peeve of the looks of this, I never like it when a product puts the year. See if I can get it to show. I'm never a fan when the year is put on a product when it's displayed because I think that really dates it. So like if I buy this controller in 2025 and it says 2024 on it, I don't know. That's something that just bothers me. I do wish you could buy different color of these face plates as well. Maybe if there was like a smoky one, a smoke gray one, that would look really neat on here as well. So to put this all back together, you just line back up the pieces. Make sure the tabs are all going in the right spots, like so. And there you go. It's put all back together. The face buttons of this controller are mechanical mouse click like switches. When you click them or push on them, you feel that nice click. It's very tactile. It feels great. They are a little bit louder. I would say they're about the same volume. Yeah, they feel like the same switches as the Vader 3 Pro. They're definitely louder than on my aim controller, for example, but they have that traditional, more mouse click feeling than you would feel on the aim controller. But with that, they are a little bit louder. The D-pad here also has those same mechanical switches. It is a 8-way D-pad, so you have your traditional up, left, down, and right, and you also have the diagonals as well. They are their own separate switches, so you don't have to do like that multiple, hit to try to get the diagonal inputs. And this being a circle, if you're playing a game where you have to kind of go around like this on your D-pad, it's extremely easy with this. It kind of just rolls around as you move your finger like so. These bumpers feel the exact same as on the Vader 3 Pro. Actually, we can look at them here. Actually, the texture on them is different. If you look at it here, the texturing on the bumper here is only on this part, and here is smooth. While on the Vader Pro, it's the exact opposite. You have the texture here, and that part is smooth, which is interesting. I don't know. Maybe they changed that because they figure if your fingers are here on the triggers and then you bump up. Actually, yep, I think that's the exact reason why they changed it. So you feel a lot more of the bumping. I mean, yeah, the texture here on the bumper or the R1, L1, whether you're a PlayStation or Xbox, whatever you like to call these. You feel it a lot more if you play like this. Well, I could see if your fingers, or if you're playing a game where your fingers might be resting up here, that might feel very smooth. But honestly, when I'm playing a game and I bump up here to do a grenade or a special like an X Defiant, you feel the texture a lot more on these than I would on the Vader 3 Pro. So mentioned before, this controller has 1000 hertz polling. I forgot to mention in the what's in the box section, you do get your wireless dongle here. It is white to match the controller, so you won't mix it up with your Vader 3 Pro dongle if you happen to have both controllers. And there's a QR code here on the back as well to bring you to the Flydigi website. So these back triggers are actually very interesting. So they don't have the traditional stops like you would see on the Vader 3 Pro with these switches here, where you switch it down and you get the full pull, or you switch it up. Now you're at a mouse click. That is not the case over here. So there's motors in these switches so that if you're firing a gun or driving a car, you can feel the vibration or the recoil here in the triggers. When you want to have the trigger stops, in the software, you set a point, whether right on the activation point or further back, and then the motor will start giving you resistance. I guess the theory is once you start to feel that resistance, you'll ease up the trigger. What I have found when I'm playing games like X Defiant, so I've played a lot of Halo and X Defiant on this controller, and when I'm using a full auto weapon, for example, and I squeeze down for this trigger, if it's a high stress situation, I blow right through the resistance of that's being put on by the motor. So here I have the motors on at their highest point, right on the activation point, and you can see here the motor is giving me resistance, and when I feel the resistance, I know to ease up. But it's also very easy to just keep going past that wall of resistance. So, like when you're in a stressful situation, I mentioned, you pull down and it's not that hard to go against the motor. I don't think that will break it or anything like that. I just, I would have preferred if they had this system because I do like it, especially for story games. I like having that feedback in the triggers, but I still want that option here to switch it to a mouse click when I need to for a first person shooter, for example. To explain what I mean when talking about these triggers, I am now going to bring up a split screen with Halo to demonstrate. Okay, here we have Halo to demonstrate the point I am making. So I'll go over here and I'll pick up the bandit. So I have the trigger stop to set the resistance right at the activation point right now that I set in the software. And hopefully you can see right where the motor is creating resistance, and I know to stop when I hit that. However, we're in a stressful situation. It's still very easy to, go right through that wall of resistance. It's really not that hard at all. And you can kind of feel them. You can feel the motor kind of trying to push you back the other way, but it's not strong enough to completely stop you. Now, you could train yourself to, when you feel that wall, to just lift back up. But, you get in a gunfight by surprise, you squeeze your controller tighter. I found myself going right through that wall of resistance pretty easily while in gameplay. Okay, now I have switched modes because I want to show you the recoil mode on these triggers. So now I'm using the assault rifle, a full auto weapon. I've gone in the software and I have switched the trigger mode to recoil. So now when you fire the weapons, you get this feedback here, which feels actually really cool and I think might, be really neat to use in a story mode. So as soon as you start firing, the motors start activating every time your weapon fires in the game. And the more you pull it down, the more you can feel that recoil happening in the triggers themselves. So I set this up one more time because I think this recoil mode in the triggers allows you to do something which I'm not entirely sure is intentional or not by the developers. So, developers of the controller. So you take your single fire weapon and you have the recoil mode on here. If you hold the trigger right around that activation point, your single fire weapon becomes full auto. So, I mean, I don't know if I would call that cheating per se. It's not a software enhancement. You're using hardware, though. Though if you do go past that activation point, then it will act like normal. It won't do the full auto. But if you hold your finger right at that sweet spot, you have a full auto weapon. And you don't have to try to, squeeze your finger as fast as you can to get all the shots off. You can just hold it in the right spot, and you are good to go. So that's something I found interesting, and I wanted to shine some light on. And just now, while I was shutting everything down, I found there's another way that you can also make your single fire weapon act full auto as well. So now I have the triggers back in the trigger stop mode, and I'll open the Flydigi software for a second here. I set the dampening position, basically the position where you start to feel the resistance, after where the actual activation is. So if I set this at 20, so now I have the trigger at 20, and I get that wall of resistance. Hold on, let me click back into the game. It works as it should. I pull the trigger, I hit that wall resistance, it's fine. If I go beyond it, nothing more happens because the resistance is right at that activation point. But if I change the resistance to after the activation point, really anywhere. So let's just do 60 for, just for fun. These settings apply to the controller insanely quick as well. That's one thing to notice. If I hold the trigger at that activation point, but before the resistance, so there's still, I guess, like a vibration, you can make the trigger go full auto still. So let's try. There we go. So you can still kind of fudge it and get full auto out of the single fire weapon that way as well. Now, I don't know if that's happening because I have the vibration on and it's triggering the activation. Actually, what's for fun? Let's see if we can turn the vibration off on the controller and see if that will stop it from doing that, because I do feel like this is not a intended result.
2 hours later.
Okay, vibration. There we go. Finally found it. So we turn vibration off. Let's get back into the game, and we will try again. And it still does it. So it has nothing to do with the controller vibrating, I guess. So isn't that that's interesting? Now, during gameplay, it would take you a second to be able to do that. I bet if you set the resistance to right, so we know 20 is right where the activation is. If we put it to like 30, then I bet it would be easier to... Yeah, then it's a little bit easier then. Because right before you feel the resistance, that's where to hold the trigger down and you get full auto. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So before we start looking at the software of this controller, let's start looking at the thumbsticks a little bit more. So these are Hall effect thumbsticks, just like in the Vader 3 Pro. This mechanism is very strange, though. Like I think it looks really cool, but I've just never seen anything like it before. It slides this way and up, so like you can all kind of also see like a gap there. But I wouldn't be worried about dirt or anything really getting in there, because when it's at rest, that space is not open. But these modules are just very unique. They're very cool looking. I don't know if these were experimental or if they've been on past Apex controllers, like in the Apex 3 and further down. But these are very unique and they look very cool. The feature that these have that the Vader 3 does not, however, is that you can adjust the tension with these. So you take the faceplate off. It's a little bit of a process, just because you have to, take your sticks off and then take the D-pad off and then take the faceplate off. But in here is a magnet holding on to the key that you use to adjust the tension, and then it works pretty much the exact same as the Elite Series 2 at this point. You have your key, and you turn it to make the tension higher or lower. I do like that this has a place on the controller to store the key, however, unlike the Elite Series 2, and it's magnetized. You just kind of drop it in there, and you can't lose it, which is fantastic, I think. And then when you're all done, you just slap all the pieces back on and you're good to go. Now, it's like I said, I do wish it could be where you just pull these off like on the Elite Series 2 and you twist it that way. That would be, a little more convenient, but it's nice to see a controller outside of the Elite Series 2 offer this feature. Here we are in Gamepad Tester. So first, let's look at the resting values of these sticks. Let's start with the left one first. So we'll move it around like so in random and then let go. And we want to consistently get values in the 0.00 to 0.000 range. And it seems we are getting that. That is fantastic. Great to see. Now we will see on the right stick, letting go. So pretty much perfect resting values. So that's fantastic. Now let's move to the circularity test. We'll start by moving the left stick slow and in a circle. So we're getting, let me do that one more time actually. All right, we are moving the left stick. So that one was better. We're getting 10.8 and 11.3 on that side. Let's do them both one more time just to make sure they are consistent. And looks like they are going to remain the exact same. So that's good. As long as you have values under 20%, that's what you want to see. Of course, lower is better, but this test, what it's really seeing, it's roughly kind of just testing how round the anti-friction rings are on your controller. Anything below 20% is a good value, and you won't see any negative effects in gameplay. I don't put a lot of stock into this test, like how some people stress, getting as close to zero as possible. Really, as long as you are getting a value under 20%, you are good to go. Let's now take a look at the Flydigi software for this controller. So here we are at the Flydigi Space-Station software. It's the exact same software you use for the Vader 3 Pro. So if you already have that controller, you most likely already have this downloaded on your computer. So we have all these same sections as before. You have your multiple profiles that you can save to the controller itself, and you can cycle through with the screen. We'll take a look at the screen later. I know we haven't dove into that yet. And you can use the section here to reassign all the back buttons as well. You can see here the assignments I have made. And here on the joystick section is where you can switch between linear and instant. Default is the linear. I would just leave it on default because I think instant and delay and custom, unless you have trained yourself to use those modes, default is just the most straightforward and the easiest to learn, I believe. You can set your different points in here as well. You can set your dead zone, this being a Hall effect controller. It comes with the dead zones at 0 already. When I got the Vader 3 Pro, I think the dead zones were already set to 5, but it was nice to see that they were already set to 0 here, which is great. Next is the gyro. If you're playing with this with a Switch, I can see this being useful, but I never use the gyro, so I've never really dove into that section. Trigger. So this is where you can set that trigger lock mode. As you see here, I have it still on recoil from when I was showing you earlier. If you put it in trigger lock mode, this is where you can set where that wall of resistance will first start. So if you drop it all the way down to 20, that puts the resistance starting immediately at the activation point. If you bring it any higher than that, it's putting the resistance after the activation point. So 200 means there's no resistance at all. It's the full trigger pull, no resistance, and you can put it halfway. So you will feel that resistance after the activation point, but halfway through the pull. I set it right at 20, so I get that resistance starting immediately after the activation of the trigger. And then general, this is where you can do all of your RGB type of stuff and vibrations. There is an adaptive trigger mode that does try to attempt to be like a PS5 trigger. It only works on Steam games, apparently, so I have not been able to test this out. The only game I'd be interested in trying it on is Grand Theft Auto, and I have that on Epic, so it did not move over. But I mean, that I would probably use that kind of recoil mode. I think you can use that with the driving games as well. If you go to the screen settings, this is where you can change the screen on your controller. This is the one I'm currently using on mine. You do have to have the controller wired to change this, though, so please keep that in mind. You can't change this wirelessly. That's kind of a bummer. I'm not sure where the limitation is on that. Maybe because these are not saved on the controller itself. They're saved in the software, so then it has to send it through the wire. That's the only rationale I can really think of. Speaking of the screen, let's dive in and look at the on-screen settings on the actual controller itself. All right, so to use this screen, you're going to hold down this home button for about 2 seconds, and then you will be right in the menu. I'll try to hold this in such a way so that the mirror finish on the controller isn't having a war with my light so much. So hopefully there we go. So you have connect, you have button mapping, you have config switch, and you have settings. So in config switch, this is where you can go to all your different profiles. So like I'm in config 1 right now, which has the full trigger pull. If I were to go to config 2, which is what I have for the to have the stops engaged, see now that's engaged. It does it very quick, which is really nice to see. Then you have settings where you can adjust the brightness and the vibrate and the language. Luckily, mine was in English at default. I've seen other earlier reviews of this where it was in Chinese at default, and then they kind of had to stumble through the settings to try to get it in English. So it's nice to see that they're shipping in English now by default. Brightness, that is for the brightness of the screen. About, let's see if that's all. That's where you see all your different firmwares. The controller, the screen, the triggers, they all have different firmwares, which is kind of interesting. Button mapping, this is where you can test buttons, reset everything, button edit if you would like to do that. And then connect is PC, Android, Switch, iOS, and more. So it's really cool that you can adjust all these settings on the fly on the controller itself, and you don't have to go into the software if you don't want to. This is a much smaller screen than you'll find on like the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra controller, and this one is not full color. It's mostly, blue and white and black. It's not quite like the screen you'll find on that controller, but it is nice to have. I much prefer this over other controllers like the KK3 Max, where you have to use like blinking lights and stuff to try to navigate through all the menus. Having a screen is helpful if you want to do settings involving no software. I much rather have a screen for that than blinking lights and all of that. Here is the Amazon page for the Flydigi Apex 4 controller. It is currently $159.99 in US dollars. It does go on sale every once in a while, though. If I scroll down and using the vetted plugin for my browser, I can see here that on June 18th, it was $135.99. So it does go on sale every once in a while on Amazon. Okay, let's talk about the pros and cons of this controller. Pros, it's a beautiful controller, I think. The screen part is really cool. It has fantastic face buttons and D-pad, Hall effect joysticks. The rubber grips here are really nice. You don't have to install your own like I did on the Vader 3 Pro. The back button system, I think, works great for me. I use it the same way as I do the Vader 3 Pro. It's the exact same system, and I think it works great, especially if you're the kind of person like me that does not use your ring fingers to use all 4 back buttons. You use your middle fingers to hit all 4. This is the button system for you. Another pro of this controller is the feedback of these triggers. They feel really cool when playing a single player game, especially getting that feedback um, in the triggers with the motors. It's a fantastic feature, and I would like to see that in more controllers. This controller also just feels really premium. One complaint I had of the Vader 3 Pro when I was viewing that is that I thought it felt kind of cheap, sort of like a toy. And the plastics used kind of looks kind of cheap as well. Now, granted, me adding these rubber grips to it did help with the feel, and now it feels much nicer. But the Apex Pro feels premium right out of the box. It feels fantastic. The rubber grips here are great, and there's no reason to add things to this like there was the Vader 3 Pro. Now, for cons, even though I praise the triggers, I do have to list that as a con as well, because you don't have like true trigger stops here like you do on the Vader 3 Pro. And I would have preferred this, especially for super competitive first person shooters. I like having that clicky mouse click function here and just being able to turn it off, you know, whenever I want, even in the middle of the game if I feel like it. So I do wish there was a way they could combine the motor function that's in this controller, but still give us the option to have the mouse click triggers that's in the Vader 3 Pro. If they were able to do that, then then the trigger system would pretty much be perfect. The other con is white is the only color this controller comes in.
Does it come in black?
I do wish there was a black version. A black version with the, chrome mirror finish, I think would look really sick. And I do wish there was more color options for this controller. The other con, I guess, is a manner of opinion, is the price at $159.99. It's still cheaper than a fully priced Elite Series 2, which doesn't have half the features that this has. This is a much better deal, I believe. But the Vader 3 Pro on Amazon, you can get for about 80 bucks. And on places like AliExpress, if you're okay from ordering from there, you can get it for, as low as $50 and even cheaper. And you still have the Hall effect sticks, you still have the same mechanical buttons, you still have the same back paddle system here, and you get two extra buttons here. I've actually never used these, but if you do want two extra buttons, you have them right here. You have the same D-pad, and it's these controllers share a lot of features. What sets them apart is one, the screen, two, the being able to adjust the tension on these sticks, which is pretty cool. I do wish you could do that on the Vader 3 Pro. The screen, the sticks, the motors inside the triggers, and that's really about it that sets these two apart. I mean, they use the same stick caps that you can take off. Is They don't sell extra face panels for this in different colors, so I'm not going to set that aside and say that's a pro that the panel is magnetic, you can take it off, because they don't sell other colors. So it's not like, the aim controller where you can just take these off and then buy brand new ones and slap them back on there. So it's not that, it's not the same thing. So it with this being $80, I'm talking about buying on Amazon, and this being 159, unless you really want that screen and really want the tension adjusting, I it might be kind of a hard sell. I'm glad I have both of these. And I can tell I'm going to be using both of them going forward. But I think what's going to happen is, for super competitive first person shooters, I think I'm going to be drawn to the Vader 3 Pro more. And for story games, I'm for sure going to be drawn to the Apex 4 more. This, I think, is a fantastic controller for single player games, and I'm really looking forward to using this in, a non online, probably co-ops and things like that. Flydigi did announce, though, they're coming out with a Vader 4 Pro, which is taking some of the features of the Apex and bringing them to the Vader, such as being able to adjust the tension of the sticks, for example. And I think I'm not sure yet because I don't have one and it's not available in the American Amazon yet. I think it might have the motors and the triggers as well and the stops. Hopefully, fingers tied, because that would be basically the best of both worlds. So hopefully, I get to review the Vader 4 Pro someday. But I would like to thank FlyDigi very much for sending me this awesome controller. I very much appreciate it. And if you liked this video, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I also stream on Twitch several times a week. That link should be popping up right here, right now. So come follow me on Twitch and you can come ask me questions about the products I use or my various videos, or just come and hang out. A link to all my other social accounts will be left in the description as well. I will also leave the Amazon link for the Apex 4 in the description as well as the Vader 3 Pro and these Play Vital thumbstick caps that I use on my Vader and the rubber grips. I do have a video reviewing these grips as well. I will leave a link to that video in the description as well if you are interested in checking those out. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day. Peace.